The historian of 1 Kings reviews the history of the kings of Israel and Judah and evaluates their varying degrees of success. Though the world measures success on the basis of political achievement and power, the biblical historian evaluates these kings on the basis of their faithfulness to God. But the historian emphasizes through the life of Elijah what Jin He Han describes as human survival only through the provisions of God. This, of course, is still a crucial message for God's people. Equally important is the prophetic role within society as represented in the biblical account by the figure of Elijah. Oftentimes, this prophetic voice must monitor and challenge the abuse, especially of an economic sort, that may derive from any leader's authority, even those who are called to lead God's people.
The historian of 1st and 2nd Kings tirelessly sounds the refrain of King so-and-so did evil in the sight of the Lord. No king in the north gets a passing grade, and except for a few, the kings in the south also leave behind rather disappointing legacies. The biblical tradition of the kings of Israel presents a history going from bad to worse from generation to generation. When the biblical narrative gets to the reign of Omri, worse becomes worst. A modern historian may find Omri's remarkable reign impressive. He built a new capital of the kingdom in Samaria. He established a dynasty that lasted 3 generations. Even the inscription on the Moabite stone mentions how Omri subdued Moab. And later, Assyrian kings actually referred to Israel as the land of the house of Omri. However, the historian of 1st Kings is not at all impressed with Omri's internationally renowned political achievements. The historian skims over the rule of Omri with only half a dozen verses and offers this poignant summary. Omri did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did more evil than all who were before him. According to the Bible's account, Omri contributed nothing positive to the religious life of Israel and instead encouraged Israel's idolatry. The historian of 1st and 2nd Kings never measures the royal reign by how powerful the king may have been in the world, but by how faithful he was to the Lord. By that standard, there was a king even worse than Omri. That distinction is held by his son Ahab. According to the historian, Ahab, son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. Omri was the worst, and Ahab was even worse than the worst. The historian's verdict against Ahab is based on the damage he caused to the religion of Israel. Not only did Ahab continue the practices of the past kings who perverted the nation's faith, but worshiped Baal, the god of the Canaanites. Under Ahab's rule, Israel was no longer a nation that worshiped God alone. And the biblical historian is absolutely furious. Ahab did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than had all the kings of Israel who were before him. It is against the historical background of this lowest point in Israel's history that the prophet Elijah comes on the scene. Elijah's prophetic ministry sets out to turn the heart of the people back to the one and only true God. When the people are no longer clear whether they are to worship the Lord or Baal, and when many assume they could even worship both, Elijah proves who the one true God is by demonstrating who it is that gives the rain. The significance of Elijah's remarkable demonstration of God's power has to do with the agricultural attributes of the land of Israel. According to the book of Deuteronomy, before the children of Israel entered the land, God alerted them about the rainfall situation. For the land that you are about to enter to occupy is not like the land of Egypt, from which you have come. In Egypt, agriculture depended on the irrigation system from the Nile. But the land that you are crossing over to occupy is a land of hills and valleys, watered by rain from the sky. Literally, the text in Deuteronomy chapter 11 says that the land drinks water of the rain from heaven. Consequently, no rain, no harvest. When the people of Israel entered the land of Canaan, they encountered the Canaanites people boasting of their religious technique of assuring adequate rainfall for their field year after year. The Canaanites believed Baal, the god of storm and thunder, gave them the rain. Forgetting how God provided for them in the wilderness, Israel gradually adopted the practice of these other nations who believed that they got their water supply from Baal. Elijah set forth to prove that it was not Baal, but it was God who watered the field and provided produce. Elijah set out to make clear that to worship Baal would be betrayal. Life depended upon God alone. And so Elijah models in his own life absolute dependence on God. After he declares that there will be no rain unless God tells him to speak otherwise, Elijah is sent to Wadi Kerith, east of the Jordan, and is instructed to drink from the wadi. The wadi is an interesting phenomenon. When there is enough rain, the wadi is full of water. But after the rain stops, it will disappear. Elijah is commanded to drink from the wadi that has water only when the Lord gives rain. Elijah survives on water from the wadi and lives on food that the Lord sends to him through ravens. His very survival becomes the prophetic word. One thrives only as God provides. In the third year of the drought, God sends Elijah back to the people so that he may challenge them to choose whom they are going to serve. The timing is critical here. In the third year of the drought, the people run out of even what they managed to save for the next year's planting. Another year of drought would spell a widespread famine. Now Israel is at a crossroad between choosing life and choosing death. On the eve of potential disaster, the famous contest on Mount Carmel takes place. Elijah asks the people, "How long will you go limping with two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." On Mount Carmel, the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah stage an elaborate ritual for their altar. They spend many hours shouting and lacerating themselves, but to no avail. There is no sign of response from Baal. Then Elijah prays and God answers. And when the Lord accepts the sacrifice on the altar with a great consuming fire, the people cry out, "The Lord indeed is God. The Lord indeed is God." They get the point. Elijah's prophetic challenge to Ahab's idolatrous rule had political implications. Elijah's call for purity of worship put him on a collision course with the power that sponsored the Baal worship. King Ahab calls Elijah troublemaker and the king's enemy. Queen Jezebel threatens his very life. Then King Ahab's blatant disregard for the law of God reveals its violent contour in the atrocity he commits against Naboth. Ahab wants to have Naboth's vineyard for the royal vegetable garden because it is near the palace. Proximity presents an opportunity to be good neighbors, but royal greed turns it into an occasion of bloodshed. In this story, two types of authority clash with each other. On the one hand, the authority of God's law demands respect even from the king. And as Naboth points out, The law of God forbids that he should hand over his ancestral inheritance. On the other hand, the king claims the authority to do whatever he wants. When Naboth refused to surrender the land, Ahab takes it as a royal affront and gets depressed. Jezebel finds Ahab rather pathetic and volunteers to demonstrate to Ahab how to govern. As far as Jezebel is concerned, the king can take whatever he wants anywhere, anytime, and anyone who stands in the king's way should be eliminated like Naboth. So Naboth is put to death. All too often, that might constitute the end of the story, the end of a sad story about a person who dared to oppose the throne with integrity. But this is not just any monarchic society. In Israel, the king cannot simply set up an innocent to be murdered. So God sends Elijah to convict Ahab and Jezebel and to sentence them to death for the murder of Naboth. Once again, we see Elijah's prophetic ministry guided by a singular theme: honor God. The historian of 1 Kings would celebrate the moments when the king and the people served God with wholehearted devotion and honored God with faithfulness and justice. Unfortunately, there were not too many of those genuine moments. According to the historian of 1 Kings, the question persists: will the king and the people of God listen to the prophetic voice that demands faithfulness and justice? For God's people today, the question remains the same.